What we're starting off with here is actually a pretty natural place to think of for anything mathematical, because the heart of a lot of mathematical processes, the heart of a lot of mathematical thought, mathematical interest, really anything to do with math, is thinking in terms of patterns. Being able to see certain things happening and trying to describe what general behavior that might fall under. For example, even though teaching while wearing a mask is uncomfortable and sweaty and not a whole lot of fun, I have noticed that in the past couple of years since I started doing that, since I've been doing that as a result of COVID, although hopefully this video is future-proof and you'll just have to think a little bit more in the past tense here because I don't want to teach in a mask forever, hopefully. But point is, since I've started that practice, I haven't picked up a seasonal virus that I used to get every year, that I got every year from 8th grade, essentially, until I finished grad school. And so from that, I might draw the conclusion that wearing a mask reduces the chances of getting sick. Specific evidence, draw the conclusion. Or for something else that might be a bit more specious, I could think about something like flipping my coin and seeing that if I flip it, I don't know, some number of times, if I get heads all those times, let's say I get heads 5 times in a row.
Heads. 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 Heads.
Then I might look at that and say to myself, does that mean that heads are on a roll and I should expect the 6th to also be heads? Or does that mean that tails are due, and if I flip the coin again, I should instead expect to get tails?
It must be indicative of something besides the redistribution of wealth. Heads.
Either case of those things falls under an idea of a thing called the gambler's fallacy, which is sort of a thing that we'll get to later near the end of the semester when we're talking about probabilities. But point is here that when we're looking for patterns, sometimes we get things where our evidence actually helps us and actually tells us what sort of things we're looking for. It's actually useful, and then sometimes not so much. We have to be a little bit careful about how we draw our conclusions from the information we're given. But the idea here, the main piece that we're working from, is a thought process called inductive reasoning, where the idea of inductive reasoning broadly is to take specific evidence, specific cases, specific pieces of data maybe, specific numbers, specific values, and draw from them a more generalized conclusion. So something like, seeing that I didn't get sick a few semesters in a row indicates that wearing masks makes you less likely to get sick. For another everyday type of example, you could think about what happens when you get up in the morning. That if, for example, you get up in the morning at 8 a.m. every single day on the dot, and you aren't late for some string of days in a row, you might think to yourself, hey, if I get up at 8 a.m., then I won't be late. Where this is an idea of a thing that in math we call a conjecture or a hypothesis. It's an idea that may be true, might not be true, but it's something that we draw. It's the result that we get from our inductive reasoning. Excuse me, I'm thinking ahead in my words to that second one up there that I'll get to in a couple minutes here. But again, we have to be careful that our logic actually works in the way that it does, in the way that we are hoping that it does, because often we're talking about specific pieces of evidence, and you can have as many specific pieces of evidence as you want. That doesn't mean that it always happens. Anecdotes aren't the guaranteed truth. For example, you could get up at 8 a.m. every single day for a long time and have that always work, but then maybe one day you get up at 8 a.m. and there was an accident at 7:59 in the morning on the route you like to take, so you end up being late that day. Your conclusion isn't wrong. you have there what is called a counterexample. It's just an example that goes against the conclusion that you're hoping to prove correct, that you're hoping is correct based on the evidence that you have. Where, as we'll see when we're talking about this with a couple of examples, it doesn't actually matter how many times a thing is true. If it's not true once, if we have one counterexample, then we can't say it holds. So let's take a couple more, let's say, numerical, more exacting, more mathy examples here to understand this line of reasoning a little bit better.